Well, all right, people. So I really want to talk about WWE here and how it did in the 2010s. And let me tell you, it was shit. I watched a big portion of it, but I just got so tired of it, I had to stop watching it. And really, the main point, I think, a way to sum it all up is that WWE created zero new big stars in the decade of the 2010 to 2000 to the end of 2019. That's really what I'm talking about. And this company just progressively has gotten worse ever since the Attitude Era stopped. Now, obviously, the Attitude Era was the greatest era of wrestling, the gold standard. So many top stars came out of that era, whether it be Austin, Triple H, The Rock, Jericho. I mean, you could just go on and on and on about the number of top stars, not only top wrestling stars, but just mainstream figures. I mean, everybody knows who The Rock is, everybody knows who Stone Cold is. Then you go after the Attitude Era to the ruthless aggression era, which obviously was not as good as the Attitude Era, but was still very good. Still produced many big stars. OVW was a big success in producing many big names in this company. Batista, Orton, um, Cena, um, and more. Edge made a big name for himself. Undertaker, kept going strong through the ruthless aggression. I mean, many big stars that were, Undertaker was a big name in the Attitude Era, so you could say that, well, he wasn't created in the ruthless aggression era, but still many big stars created in the ruthless aggression era that are still big names to today, like Batista. Batista's now big in Hollywood. So you had many big stars created in the ruthless aggression era, many big stars created in the 2000s. However, you move to the 2010s. How many big stars were created from 2010 to 2019? You could say zero. I mean, there's been stars that have been in the main event, like Rollins and Reigns and people like that. But can you really say that there's been a big name created that's consistently in the main event, that's consistently over, that's consistently putting on big matches? I mean, not really. I mean, you look at Daniel Bryan, he was a big name, but now he's fizzled out, and part of that's due to the injury, but still, he's not really a big name. CM Punk, obviously, he retired because he was sick of this shit. Rollins, he had a couple nice runs, it looked like, but I remember he had his championship run, and they just made him look like shit as champion. So I mean, I don't know if I would even consider him a big star. AJ Styles has, put on some nice matches, but he made his name before WWE. So you could make an argument that WWE never really made him into a big star. When he came into this company, he was already a big star. Um, and then just the over reliance on people who are 20 years out of their prime during this period of 2010 to 2019. It's one thing to make an appearance, like a special Rumble appearance, like Roddy Piper did in '08, or do something like that. But the over reliance on putting, big names from the Attitude Era, like Goldberg, like Undertaker, into the main events when these guys are clearly years out of their prime, is just embarrassing. It's embarrassing that they can't create any new stars, that they can't create any big draws, that they keep having to rely on people that are in their late 40s, that are in their early 50s. I mean, you got fucking Sting going out there almost killing himself a few years ago. I mean, it's embarrassing. You got fucking Shawn Michaels coming out of retirement to embarrass himself. You got Undertaker, a 55-year-old man who should have hung up his boots about 10 years ago. I mean, it's just embarrassing that they can't create any new talent and that they keep having to rely on people in the Attitude Era that are progressively getting worse. I mean, what are they going to do in 5 or 10 years when these people physically cannot stand up? I mean, it's and then the whole NXT thing, which is a good idea. It's definitely better than the main product, but has NXT created any new stars? I mean, it's a good foundation for creating new stars, but if you're gonna bring these guys up to the main roster and they're not gonna be built into anything, then what's the point? It's like they just seem to keep recycling guys from the indies through NXT. They put on a couple, acrobatic matches in NXT, then they come to the main roster and they just stay in the mid card forever, and nobody gives a shit about them. I mean, how many people are just gonna, it's like the same cycle. I mean, I guarantee you look at NXT 2 years ago, they had a totally different roster, but are any of those guys big stars now? Are they big talents, big draws? No. It's just the same shit over and over and over again. Nobody gets over, no big stars, nothing. And I mean, these matches are great. I mean, they're very athletic, but you need more than fucking sunset flips and shooting star presses and top rope moves and high spots to have a good company, to have a good wrestling company. You need storylines, you need promos, you need character, you need to actually build up a feud. You just can't go out there and put on a 5-star match and be, oh, there you go, wrestling fans. No, you need character. Was Steve Austin like this great wrestling technician that put on that did fucking shooting star presses off the top rope and high spots and no. Same thing with a lot of these guys in the Attitude Era. But they had character, they had promos, they made you get emotionally involved in their matches. I mean, same thing with a lot of the guys from the Ruthless Aggression. Batista, was he doing top rope moves? No. Edge, Undertaker, no. But the guys now are obviously very athletic, more athletic than any time in wrestling history. But the ratings keep going down, and this company is progressively getting worse. Ratings are getting worse. I mean, over the last 20 years. And that's just a reflection on the shitty creative team. I like to call it the non-creative team because there is no creation. The only thing they create is shit. And that's why people like me have tuned out and stopped watching. That's why the ratings keep hitting record lows and less people stop watching. So you need more than just guys doing top rope moves. You need storylines, you need emotion, you need promo ability, you need character development. Because I don't care how good a wrestler you are. If there's no character development or input into the storyline, nobody's gonna give a shit. So, I mean, it's just sad the way that this company has deteriorated, because you can make an argument that the level of athletic ability and wrestling ability is the best it's ever been in wrestling history. But it's just the non-creative team, and the storylines and the promos are just so shitty that you just can't watch it. It's sad. I mean, it's sad that I mean, really the saddest part about it is they keep having to bring back has-beens and people who are not in their primes anymore from the Attitude Era. I mean, really think about it. You're bringing back people who were in their prime 20 some years ago. I mean, how retarded is that? I mean, really the only person who hasn't come back is Austin. I mean, it's just sad. And then the last thing, I guess, would be the Divas division. Now, they've really been hyping the Divas division, and it's really been, to me, a disappointment because they really push it it's really a non-organic push. They play into the women's rights thing, and it's just, Becky Lynch calling herself the man was really a turn off to me because she's got a fucking pussy. She's got tits. Last time I checked, she's not a man. I mean, so just the non-organic style of the Divas division being pushed to the moon was a turn off for me. I mean, Divas wrestling it's just never going to be as good as men's wrestling, and the fact that people can't accept that is just beyond me. But we live in a world now where everybody wants to be equal. Women want to be treated like men, except if it's an inconvenience to them. So, I mean, I felt that really played a role in this Divas division being pushed to the moon. I mean, it's just a fact of the matter. Men's sports are a lot better than women's sports. And why? Because women are not as strong and physically gifted as men. So, I mean, this decade of 2010 to the end of 2019 was a complete failure. Really, no new stars built. A lot of people pushed that shouldn't have been pushed. Um, and just this like even Stevens booking bullshit too. Never got anybody over. You know, people like The Miz would be main eventing WrestleMania 27, and then a year later they're a jobber. I mean, a lot of people. You know, they would give him the WWE title or the World Heavyweight title, or they would give him a big push. Only 6 months later, they're a jobber. Um, so I mean, there's been a couple people that have gotten pushed that have made a name for themselves, but can you really say these are big stars on the level of Batista or The Rock or Austin or Hogan or Cena? No, in my opinion, no. And it's a shame that the non-creative team has just really been a failure, because you have a lot of talented wrestlers uh, on TV and that are employed by WWE, but the failure of the non-creative team to put together good storylines, to put together good matches, to put together good feuds, and to build new stars and to create big names, not only in the wrestling business, but big names in pop culture, in society, is a real shame. And it's a real shame because I have stopped watching. And I guess I said the Divas were the last thing, but another thing I want to talk about too that I don't think gets enough attention is the expansion of time on television, meaning that they moved Raw to 3 hours. They added all these new shows like NXT and pay per views, and they just added more and more time that you have to watch to really know what the fuck's going on in wrestling. I mean, it's just show after show after show, hour after hour after hour, and it really started with Raw going to 3 hours. And moving Raw to 3 hours was a total clusterfuck because you had just throwaway segment after throwaway segment because they had to fill the time with something, and they just really filled that extra hour with filler, with just bullshit, with jobbers, with people like Brodus Clay dancing around like a motherfucker. I mean, it was just not a good thing. And on top of it's like, so to be an invested wrestling fan, you gotta watch Raw, you gotta watch SmackDown, you gotta watch NXT, you gotta watch the pay per views. So all in all, if you're a big wrestling fan, big WWE fan, you're probably spending 6, 7, 8 hours a week just watching WWE. I mean, that is ridiculous. The average person out there who has a job, who has a family, who has other hobbies, doesn't have time to watch 8 hours of WWE a week. And nor do they want to because the product is just shit. Who would want to watch 8 hours of wrestling, of WWE per week? Not me. I don't even want to watch 30 minutes of it. So that I feel was another big mistake that they made that drove away fans, that turned away fans because I could hardly keep up with 3 hours of Raw a week. It's just so much to ask. I mean, most shows out there have like 14 episodes a year. So, like, if you want to watch like The Walking Dead or some Netflix show, you're only investing probably about 14 hours uh, a year in it. But if you want to watch WWE, you're investing about what? About 8 times 50? 400 hours a year? I mean, that is ridiculous. So there you go, people. There's my thoughts on WWE in the 2010s. A complete failure and just so shitty. So there you go, people.